Hey, what's going on, everybody? I have another video for you promoting my album releasing May 19th. It's called Finding Peace. And I thought I'd talk to you a little bit today about how I grew up and more specifically, kind of where I grew up, because I think that's maybe unique. And basically, I grew up back and forth between Alaska and Costa Rica, where my dad is from and my mom is from, respectively. And they met through, some crazy twist of fate and fell in love. And when they decided to have children, they both agreed they would, we would get better opportunities if we were in the States. So they moved back to Alaska, but they always promised my mom's side of the family that they would keep a connection with them. And, they kept that promise. Every year that I've been alive, I've come back to Costa Rica to visit my mom's side of the family, and for a really extended amount of time, to be honest. When I was really young, it was about a 6 and 6 month split, like pretty much equally. As I got into school, that became harder, and it dropped to kind of 9 months in Alaska and 3 months in Costa Rica, which is why I think my English is much better than my Spanish, although I am bilingual. So, and that's been really huge and a huge advantage in life. Um, and if you looked at a globe and someone challenged you to find two places that were the most different, I think it would be really hard to find two places that are as different as Fairbanks, Alaska, and Costa Rica. They're just absolutely worlds apart. I remember in Alaska growing up, you have these long winters, especially in Fairbanks. It'd get 60 below zero in Fahrenheit pretty much every other winter, and at least 50 below for a couple weeks there. And you have no sun basically after December 21st, I think, is the winter solstice. And at that point, you're just basically, you live in a dark, gloomy, frozen, dead world, and you stay inside a lot. And I think that's one of the reasons that maybe I had such an advantage sticking with the guitar and really learning it, and with music, was because during the winters there wasn't a whole lot that you could really do easily. So having an instrument, something that you can play in your room and just have nothing but time with, was something that I think a lot of Alaskans can relate to. And on the flip side, when I was in Costa Rica, it just felt like a paradise, Not to say that Alaska is not a beautiful place in its own right. I would encourage anybody to go there in the dead of winter and experience that. It's its own kind of beauty, but I think Costa Rica is a more traditional sense of what people associate vacations and natural beauty with. At least, Alaska has that in the summer, but Costa Rica, you know what I'm saying. So having that contrast was really clear, and I think it did influence me a lot growing up. I think I was kind of that last generation on out the door that was raised without smartphones and internet access 24/7. So I had a really kind of traditional upbringing in that sense. And in Costa Rica, it was like on steroids. My parents would just let me go out the front door at the beginning of the day. I'd run around with all my cousins who were my age, all born within like 6 months of each other, and really close with still to this day. They're just essentially more brothers than cousins. And all the stuff we'd get into covered in dirt and mud, and they would help me a lot with my Spanish because that was the time that I had to really practice. And when I was in the States, it was basically solely English. In Alaska, when I would always get so sad leaving Costa Rica and saying goodbye to my family and having to get on that flight. And first of all, it was like 3 flights to get from Costa Rica to Alaska and back, vice versa. It's just a long, long trip, and that's exhausting for a kid, and for my parents, I'm sure, who had to deal with their kids that whole time. But yeah, I just remember always feeling so sad leaving Costa Rica and my family and going back to Alaska, but being excited to see my friends there I wasn't as close with my cousins in Alaska, but I know that they're doing really well now, and it's always great to see them when I do. But there was a bigger age gap between me and those cousins, so I think it was understandable. And there was something, though, about Fairbanks that was important to my upbringing, just the small townness of it, and the just all the character that it had. Every little corner of the town had some kind of history and some kind of memory that I can just be walking through town, and every point I'm like, oh, something crazy happened there, something funny happened there with my friends. Or so I think it really affect I love having the contrast. I don't know what it's like to grow up in a big city, and I'm sure it has the same thing in its own charms, but I really am glad, at least for myself. I couldn't imagine how different I would be if I grew up in a place that was maybe more populous, if that's even a word. I think it is. And I'm just, yeah, really happy of the way that things turned out. And now I'm here living in Costa Rica, and I recorded the whole album here and trying to make it work with contract jobs and this kind of a thing, but where I can do them remotely from here. And everything has kind of been set up in my life to kind of give me the most flexibility to bridge that gap from being away from my, basically, once I got to college, my parents retired and my sister kind of moved away. They all moved down to Costa Rica. So I spent the last decade pretty much in the States on my own, just working on trying to build my career to a point where I could make it work and be attractive enough as an employee to convince companies to allow me to work remotely from outside of the country. And I think I'm finally at that point. So it's all coming together, and took some time to record this album, which is something I've always wanted to do. And the album cover itself is right on the beach down there here in Manuel Antonio. And I'm just really excited. Everything's come together, and it feels like my life has been always kind of headed in this direction. And I would love to, at some point in the future, have a house up in Alaska, and that I could go and visit in the dead of winter and feel that sensation that I did as a kid again. But for right now, I'm happy here in paradise. So if you guys ever, have the opportunity to visit either Costa Rica or Alaska, I highly recommend it. You go in the summer, go in the winter, go in the rainy season, go in the dry season. It doesn't matter. You're going to have a great time. And it's, if you ever need tips or whatever, you need to know where to go, just let me know. I can help you out. But I appreciate it. Thank you guys again for listening. And again, the album's coming out May 19th. I hope you enjoy it. I put a lot of, heart into it, and I just appreciate everything. So catch you guys on the next video. Peace.